Real-life highway incidents. I was driving through Montana, headed east. My company had miscalculated my mileage, so I requested an emergency fuel up. I got a response with the nearest gas station that I could get approved at. It wasn't exactly close, so I turned off the main highway and headed toward my stop. It's pitch black. There's no moon, no city lights, and haven't seen any headlights for about an hour. I'm cruising down the highway and I see something in the middle of the road at the furthest extent of my headlights, so I slow down naturally as I approach it. When I come to pass it, I get one good glance at it and slam on my brakes as I pass right in the middle of the highway. All I could think of was, what did I just see? So I back up looking in my mirror until I see a red silhouette in my brake lights. I put my brakes on, put on my jacket, grab my flashlight and hop out. Walk to the back of the trailer, put my light on it. There it was, a headless, skinless, mangled corpse. I froze and my jaw dropped. I didn't know what I was looking at. I just stood there in the middle of the highway, in the cold, stagnant air. The only sound is the hum of my truck about 50 feet back, and watching the steam rise from this pile of meat. There's no fur, no clothing, just a fully intact ribcage with a mess of other miscellaneous bones attached by ligaments. I debated calling the police, as the ribcage looked big enough for someone my size, but I looked at my phone and had 0 cell service, and the nearest town was about 50 miles out. When I put my phone away, I flashed my light round, and standing at the edge of the road was a handful of coyotes staring at me. Then they started coming through the fence and trotting in my direction. I figured this is the part where I get back in the truck before I get into a situation. So I did, and continued on my way. I still to this day do not know if it was a human or not, whatever it was and whatever had happened, that I was almost a witness of. I convinced myself that it was more than likely a deer and was hit by another truck, like my own, at highway speeds. That would definitely do it some significant damage. But in retrospect, I've never seen roadkill missing its flesh before. I was driving through Kansas on the I-70 at night once when I hit one of the craziest thunderstorms I've ever seen. It was so bad that the road started flooding a bit, and I had to pull into a service plaza and wait it out. That's when the creepy part happened. As we're sitting in the truck watching the storm, there's a series of lightning strikes followed by a blackout. Suddenly, a massively bright light starts moving behind the clouds, too slowly to be an aircraft, but too fast to be part of the storm system. It moves up over the hills and trees before crossing directly overhead, then disappears a bit behind the service plaza. The transit from tree line to plaza took maybe 5 to 10 minutes tops, and while it was overhead it cast everything in an eerie blue glow and lit up the parking lot. I seriously thought aliens were invading. Anyway, within 10 minutes the creepy light disappearing, the rain completely stopped and the parking lot lights came back on. It was like someone had flipped a switch. So I got out of there while looking in my mirrors for spaceships or those alien walkers from War of the Worlds. My most common run is Vancouver to San Francisco. It's an easy trip most of the time with very little challenge involved. I tend to prefer driving into the night because there's less traffic. Of course, driving around in the middle of nowhere during the witching hour means I've seen my share of things. UFOs, Bigfoot, the works, man. But none of that stuff has ever scared me nearly as bad as the people you see walking along the shoulder of the road far from civilization. I noticed my first one on my junior run down south on the number 5. It was a lady in a blue summer dress, just strolling down the side of the highway underneath the full moon, not a care in the world. Now, we were on a stretch that was miles and miles away from anything in either direction, and I was the first vehicle on the road that she'd likely seen since dusk. She didn't even look up to acknowledge me, though. Instead, she just kept walking on with a sort of vacant smile. I chalked it at some hippie from the Oregon Trail, hopped up on something from a nearby campsite, kept driving. But she was only the first. It's not every trip you spot them. Sometimes you see a few in a single go. It always struck me as strange because you never seem to see them during the day. Maybe you do, but they don't stick out as much under the sun. Even so, Once you know they're there, you'll start noticing the hell out of them whenever you're driving far from civilization in the dark. The other truckers call them moon wanderers, but I prefer shoulder walkers, since that's always where they are. Almost like trains on a track, they walk that little white line to wherever they're going. They're different shapes and sizes too. Men, women, tall, fat, ugly, pretty, just folks like you'd see anywhere. Sure, they're creepy, but for a long time I didn't pay them any mind beyond noticing them on occasion in the split second they were there, visible as I cruised past them. But one night, a few months ago, I passed by what looked like an old lady. She was in a hospital gown and looked like someone on death row. Sunken, given up on life sort of eyes, frizzy white hair, pale skin. She was smiling just like her grandkids had called her name. Her pace was a slow shuffle along the shoulder. Just looking at her, I could imagine the sound of her hospital slippers running over the gravelly road. I wanted to keep driving because, well, to be honest, she gave me the willies. Hell, she reminded me of my own sweet grandma. God rest her soul. So I brought my rig to a slow stop and, collecting up the flashlight and keeping my glove box, stepped out of the cab. I could hear her coming before I could see her as I'd driven a few metres ahead of her due to a long stop time. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I could visualise her wrinkly feet in those hospital slippers, shuffling ever onward. Quickly I checked the Maps app on my phone and saw the closest town to where we were was over 50 miles away. No way was this old lady walking that. Putting my phone in my jeans, I held up my flashlight and started walking towards her at the sound of a footfall. "Hello, ma'am?" I called out, hoping that she'd speak up. No such luck, just more scraping. My hairs were on edge now as I waited for her to enter into the light of my flashlight. I nearly cried out as her ghostly appearance came into view. Not because of anything that was different from before, just because she looked so much more sickly up close. "Ma'am, you okay? You're in the middle of nowhere, you know." She didn't say anything. She just kept smiling and moving steadily forward. Now my heart was beating hard. Oh, she's just senile and needs my help, I thought out loud. But my feet were frozen in place. They were going back to the truck or they weren't moving at all. She was getting closer though, and as she reached within 10 feet or so, her wrinkled hands began to reach up slowly. Her fingers wiggled in my direction like a grandma reaching for her grandchild's face. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything. She just grinned at me with pale gums. My legs gave out and I fell to my side as she reached down for me with surprising speed and dexterity. Before I knew what was going on, she had her bony fingers around my ankles and I was getting dragged down the road. Desperately, I pulled back, but her grip was superhuman. And the addition of my weight didn't seem to slow her walk in the least. She stared down at me with those beady, sunken eyes, mouth agape in a smile. I kicked at her with all the fight I had in me and luckily I connected with her jaw. To my horror, it was like kicking solid concrete. Luckily, she let go despite having no visible injury. I crawled backwards towards the middle of the road and she kept walking down the shoulder. Her hands fell back down to her side and her mouth closed in a tight-lipped smile. But her gaze stayed locked on mine as she slowly shuffled out of my flashlight's beam. I waited as her scraping bit by bit faded from my ears, and after that I ended up being half an hour of stunned silence. I just worked up the nerve to get back up and go back to my rig. There was no sign of the lady, but when I climbed into my cab and sped down the highway, it didn't take long to catch up with her. Her eyes were still stuck on me. They probably had been for the whole time as she walked away, and the last I saw of her as I gunned it away was her thin, chapped, smirking lips. According to some of the other guys I know, I'm the first who's tried to interact with a shoulder walker, and God, I'll be the last. Since then I've seen plenty more, strolling down the highway in the pitch dark. I even saw a kid once, but there ain't no way I'm ever stopping again for them, and if you're smart, you won't either. Since that night, the shoulder walkers are always looking right at me when I drive past, which they never used to do. Almost like since that old lady saw me, they all did. I'd hate to think what would have happened if I'd not managed to get free, but I can rest easy knowing that I've put my warning out there in public. Maybe I'll save a few folks with this story. These terrifying incidents have left us questioning the boundaries of our reality. Remember, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the stories we've explored today serve as a reminder that there are things in this world that defy explanation. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling content. And as always, stay curious.